it's just the part that hurt me the most was the abuse of power, and it was sexual violence that happened in the church, and that's why it was so hard for me to kind of move forward from it, because it's like, as a child, when you see that kind of stuff from the head, it tends to it's like core memories. The second church, the pastor impregnated one of the congregation members, and the wife had so much relationships within the church. And for me to go as a kid talk about that, it didn't seem appropriate to me at the time.
Trish, I'm so excited to have you join me on the show today. Thank you very much for coming. And today we are going to talk about a very sensitive topic. We're going to talk about church hurt and how to handle church hurt. I feel like it's a word that we hear a lot, and many people might not know exactly what that word means. So, Trish, what does church hurt mean to you?
Church hurt runs very deep for me. So, as I think about that, I think about, the very beginning for me, because I feel that church hurt came for me when I was a child more than in adulthood. And it's a sense of betrayal. That's what I feel when I think about church hurt. Being alone, being having to fend for yourself when it comes to religion, the mistrust. Church hurt means so many different things. It means so many different things, because to get to church hurt, you go through a lot. You experience a lot for you to get to that point where you're like, you're hurt by the church, you're hurt by the idea of the church. And then sometimes it gets to the point where you're hurt by religion because of it. But I was born into the church. My father was a pastor, and I grew up with religion up until I came here. And, it wasn't a choice for me. I was expected to go to church. I was expected to go study the Bible, read scripture and recite scriptures. But experiencing hurt within the church, when I came here, I pulled away from the church. So I think that sometimes church hurt will push you to a point where you're like giving up on God, giving up on religion, giving up on the idea of the church. Because for a very long time, going to church was not a thing that I would do. If you asked me, oh, do you want to go to church? No, I'm good. I'd listen to church online. Even when I gave up on church, sometimes I would listen to church online. But really and truly, even when I listen to it online, it brings me back to the hurt and the betrayal. And, and I'm just like, it was hard. It is hard, because I go to church now, and it's still very hard to go and accept the word 100%, accept religion 100%, accept the idea of a church community 100%, because that mistrust is just there. And, you grow from it, yes, and you try to heal from it, but it's still there.
I can 100% relate to what you said about growing up in the church, and your father being a pastor, and you're just thrown into the church. You have
no choice.
You have no choice. So I'm curious to know whether there was any point at which you got to know God for yourself, or because a lot of us, when I say us, pastors' kids,
yes,
we know the God of our Father. We don't really know God for ourselves. Yes. So did that happen for you?
It's happening now.
Oh,
it's happening now. It's taken such a long time. I tried so many times to know God for myself, but because of the church hurt, it was really hard for me to kind of wrap my head around certain things. And I think now, as I'm an adult, I have adult children, it's easier for me to see things in a different perspective. Whereas before I was learning about myself, I was learning about, what it means to be a mother, to be in a family, things like that. And I would go to church and it would just bring me back to the hurt. It would bring me back to the betrayal. It would bring me back every time. So I just kind of gave up. Then I would try to go back to the Bible, and I would try to read everything, and then I'm crying, and then I'm frustrated, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? Because, it takes a long time for those triggers to kind of calm down, So I'm at a point in my life right now that I know God is real. I know that. I believe that in my core, and I know it. So before, I used to question, because I used to always ask, well, why would God allow these things? Why would God? And nobody would answer my questions. I mean, to this day, the questions don't seem to get answered fully the way that I want them to, but I'm understanding them in a different way. And being an adult, approaching God and church and religion as an adult is a lot different. And I think it's a little bit easier for me to accept, God, and accept the church and accept religion, where I couldn't have done it before. Because again, everything was based off of, my father's family, and everybody was a part of the church. And, that family was not the best family in the world, because that's where my hurt came from. And I just didn't understand why the head of the church would not practice what the things were in the Bible, and what they preached to the congregation and things like that. So it took me a long time to understand that. And so now, I go to church. I go when I can, and when I can't, I'm online. And I'm trying to get through Bible studies. I read the Bible, and finding God now as an adult, I think, is a little bit more rewarding than as a child, because I don't think I understood it in the same way as I do now as an adult. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Do you mind talking about any experience at all? It might be, I don't know, as little as someone maybe gossiping about you in church, or any church hurt experience that you have faced.
Well, yes, people gossip about everybody all the time. So yes, that was the thing. And being the pastor's daughter, there was a lot of gossip all the time. And you couldn't be perfect enough. There isn't anything that would have made me perfect enough in the eyes of anyone in the church. And those were minor though, because I could see past it. I mean, even now, going to church now, I see little things, and I'm just like, it doesn't matter. It's just the part that hurt me the most was the abuse of power, and it was sexual violence that happened in the church. And that's why it was so hard for me to kind of move forward from it, because it's like, as a child, when you see that kind of stuff from the head, it tends to, it's like core memories. It puts a part of, it shapes who you're going to be. How you're going to see the world, how you're going to, how do you trust, and things like that. And the first experience, it was within my own family. And then the second experience, it was the other head of the church who wasn't my family member. But I saw how that caused a lot of destruction in the family. So for heads of the church to be preaching to the congregation every week, and sending the message of love and, commitment and respect and all these different things, and then they're not practicing it themselves. That really, really hit me really hard. So things like gossiping and things like, the hairstyle's not nice, the dress is not, those things were minor. It still plays a part, but those things were minor. I think I was telling a client the other day that I love jeans now. I like jeans material because I couldn't wear jeans being a part of the church.
I totally understand. I wasn't allowed to wear pants as well
You
growing
see?
up.
Yeah.
My ears weren't pierced as well until
Yeah.
I was 11. So many things that we weren't allowed to do.
I know.
Yes.
My hair, I cut my hair for the
Mm-hmm.
first time when I left home. And to this day, I regret it because we weren't allowed to cut our hair. We weren't, and that was a part of, what my dad had for everyone. And then I was like, oh, yeah. And I rebelled.
By cutting your hair.
I started wearing denim. I love denim. I mean, it doesn't matter what color. I love denim. And it comes from, I love skirts. I really do. I love skirts and dresses and stuff like that. But for a long time, I didn't want to wear them. I didn't want to have anything to do with them because it was like, well, you have to wear only skirts and dresses and they have to be a certain length. And the funny thing is, now that I've gotten older, I love skirts and dresses and I like them really long and I like to twirl and but because of those kind of experiences, it shapes what my interests are. And maybe I never would have liked denim. I don't know, but I love denim, and because denim was taken away, and it was like, no, you can't have it. It was destroyed right in front of my face, and I'm just like, oh. So things like that. There's lots of little hurts, but then there's the big hurts as well. And I think for if a young girl's listening to this part and has the big hurts similar to what I've experienced. I feel that, don't give up. Don't give up on God. Don't give up on your religion because of something that somebody else did. Because that somebody else is a person, is a human being. And they have to go through their own stuff, So whatever made them do what they did, or it doesn't have anything to do with the religion or God as a whole, So I had to learn that. It took a while, but I had to learn that to be able to come back.
Yeah, heavy stuff.
It is.
That's a lot. And, as young girls, we're very impressionable. And I've spoken to a number of young girls as well who are, church girls who grew up in the church. And one major thing that they say is I don't get it. This person's a pastor, but at home the pastor does something else.
Yeah.
My dad, who's a pastor, not my dad, but
Yeah, so what they would say.
is doing something else. Or even for me as well, growing up, there were other people that I respected and looked up to. I remember my Sunday school teacher. I respected the man a lot, and he there was one Sunday school service, and he was like, oh, he had a dream where he was ascending into heaven, and all of a sudden he just fell. And we were all laughing, I was like maybe 9, we didn't get it, right? And I think 2 weeks later, we heard that he had impregnated, I think, a choir member, and they were suspended or something. I felt really hurt from that news.
Exactly.
As a child, I was like, this is my Sunday school teacher, who has been teaching me, the way of the Lord.
Yes.
I felt betrayed.
That's where I talk about
I felt betrayed.
Yes.
And, it just leaves a mark on you. It's like, oh, you're not practicing what you preach. So what are we doing here?
Exactly.
And so I can't even imagine what you must have gone through, during that period and that season. But was there anyone you could talk to, about all of these things? Was there any leaders were there leaders in the church, or people that you could approach?
No. The first situation, all of my family members had a position in the church. Any position was filled by my family members. So
it was a family church.
Yes. The second church, the pastor impregnated one of the congregation members. And the wife had so much relationships within the church. And for me to go as a kid talk about that, it didn't seem appropriate to me at the time because when you're younger, children are seen and not heard.
Yes.
So I didn't think that I had an option to talk to anybody about anything. I remember hearing everybody talking about it. But for me to go and say that I felt a way about that, it would be, how dare you feel something about something that has nothing to do with you? That's kind of how I felt about it. So I didn't really talk to anybody about that. And all the other minor things, that I see along the way, they're so minor and very irrelevant that I felt, just take it to God and get through it on your own, kind of thing. I didn't know how else to get through it. I think now that I'm going to God on my own, I've been able to get through these type of things. I also pray, and I tell everybody I pray all the time for God to send me the right person when I need them. And that's what's been happening. The right person comes to me, and I'm able to talk about what I need to talk about when I need to talk about it. At the time, I think I need to get through it, because, sometimes things will, it's sitting on your head, but you're not going to process it until you're at that point. And I feel that God brings the right person at the right time. And that's how I've been able to kind of get through a lot of that. Because in the moment, no, there wasn't anybody to go to in the moment. I spoke to one of my cousins, but she's my age mate. So,
There wasn't much.
There wasn't much to do about it, or anybody to talk to about it, really. Yeah.
There was something you said about when you left the church, it felt like God was drawing you back.
Yeah.
And that, for me, that just explains, I guess, the characteristic of God as a good father. Like, he's always chasing after us, like, even when we're not interested, or when we're done, he's not done. So can you talk about that period, like that process? Like, would you feel angry when you felt God was reaching out to you? Or like how?
Sometimes. Sometimes. Because I went through most of my teenage experience. I did go through times where I'm just like, God does not love me. God doesn't. No, I would try to do anything that was not of God. But because you were born into the church, sometimes the things that you think is not of God is actually of God. Because my children to this day, they would be like, oh my gosh, Mom, like, relax, just, put your hair down. And because I want to make sure that I live right. And that was embedded in me since I was a child. I have to live right and live godly, live. My motto is to always walk in love. So anything I did, I was coming from a loving place. But I would always say it's not godly. It's not. I listen to reggae music. But I found a really good Christian reggae guy, because I love reggae music. I'm Jamaican, so Jamaicans and their reggae music. But I would do that, or I remembered I tried to go to clubs. Hated it. Hated everything about it. I tried so many different things to kind of turn away drinking. I hate drinking. But, I tried. And I said, the reason why I was trying is because I was like, I don't want this to define me. I don't want, Pentecostal Christian girl to be my beginning and end. So I tried to find anything else. But everything I did just brought me back to God. Not in a bad way, but it just brought me back to God. And, I had children very early. That's one of the, I think, the things that people would say is ungodly, but they are of God. Every single one of them is of God. And they brought me back to God too. So, you do a lot of things. You date people that doesn't stand for the things that you stand for. You want to get into the crowds that don't stand for the things that stand. But, like, as I was going through all of that, as I went through teenagehood into early adulthood, I was just, this is not for me. And I would always go back to God. I would go back to, privately praying and privately reading my Bible. I felt that if I broadcast it to anybody, then now I have to do it all the time. And so I would just be like, this is just a private thing. And I did that for a very long time. And then a few years ago actually, I just said, it is what it is. And I went through a really, really rough experience. And I remember I was talking to God and I said, it's not my time yet. And I knew it wasn't my time, but I had to say it out loud because it was being spoken to me that it wasn't my time to go. And I thought I was going, but it was like, someone spoke to me and said, it's not your time. And I had to say it out loud. It's not my time for me to believe it. And I believed it. And I understood that it wasn't my time because I now had to walk with God again. And I had to make sure that, my life, I'm living my life in service. And with purpose, though, because I've always lived my life in service, but now it's with purpose instead of, okay, well, I'm just existing for the sake of existing. No, I'm purposefully existing, and I'm purposefully existing because of God. So learning about God and understanding his purpose in my life has been a process. It has. And I think about those things like I wasn't a bad kid, right? I really wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't a bad teen. I was always the good person in my group. But it was just the things that I was trying to attract. It was not of God. And I thought, if I didn't have God's word around me and have God's love around me, then it would justify all the things that I went through. And, the feelings that I have about all the things that I went through. Because one lady, she said to me a few years ago, it was the same year that I ended up getting sick, literally the year before, sorry. Exactly 1 year. She said, Jesus loved you even as a child. And I never believed that. But she just randomly came up to me. I'm at the beach, just hanging out at the beach, and she walks over to me. Nobody else is at the beach because it was raining. And I was just there praying and, taking a nice little stroll. And she walked up and she said, Jesus loved you even as a child. And I needed that at that moment because that was around the time that I was thinking about going back to church. And I was praying a lot and I was reading the Bible, and I said, okay, maybe I need to go back to God. But I questioned it, and then she came. And then from there, I was just like, you know what? I can try and pretend all I want. I can pretend as much as I want. It is what it is. Just accept it and move forward. I mean, the things that are put on you about being the perfect Christian girl or the perfect church member, the perfect child of God, none of that is it. Well, it does linger. It does linger in my head, but that's not the forefront of my walk with God this time. Whereas before it was, I had to walk with God a certain way. And now I think about walking with God on my terms, on who I am now and how far I've come and the lessons that I've learned and, all of the things that God has told me along the way that I have tried to be like, nope, I don't want to hear, so yeah, it's been a journey.
Wow. So was it when that woman confirmed what God had been telling you on the beach? Was that when you found your way back to church? Or was that how you
No. No. I have been looking for church. And I tell some people this story. I don't think I told you this story, but about 2+ years, you contacted me and you said you wanted to come. And it never happened. And then I was with my husband and you messaged me and I said, So so I think Mo's going to come now. And I say, fingers crossed. But during that time, those 2 years, I've been contemplating going back to church, but mostly in the last year. And it wasn't one thing specifically that made me was like, oh, yes, I need to go back to church. But when you came, because I went to a church before you came, and I was like, yeah, no, church is not for me. But then you came, and everything that I needed to hear, I heard. And that's what I said about people coming at the right time. 2 years ago, if you had come 2 years ago and spoken to me in the way that you did, I wouldn't have received it in the same way. So what happened over those 2 years was preparing me for us meeting that day. And us meeting that day put a whole lot of things in perspective. And I speak to people about church and God all the time. But it was just that conversation, that sense of community, the sense of family. I never met you before. I never met you before. And then I said, you know what? I'm there. I was just led to go. People invite me to church all the time. All the time. People always say, Trish, go to church. You should come to my church. You'd enjoy it. I'll go, and it's just not the right fit. It's just not the right fit. Then you came, and I was just like, okay, I'll try it. And then I went and I started bawling in church. And I was like, okay. But 2 years ago, if you had come and you had said, come to church 2 years ago, I wouldn't have come. So I feel like it took you so long to come to me because God was preparing me for the message that you were bringing to me.
Wow.
That's what I think. And I tell a lot of people this story. I've never told you the story this way, but I told a lot of people this story because it helped me to understand what I was lacking and what I needed to work on to be able to go back to church.
Wow. And for context, Trish is a loctician. And so, yes, I had an appointment with her for her to help me lock my hair. So that's what she's talking about. So how long did it take you? How many years from when you left?
From when I left? Over a decade. I've lost count. Wow. I lost count. It's over a decade. I've gone to, in the last 15 years, I've gone to church, I believe, 3 times before I started attending regularly a few months ago. And I would listen online. I listen online all the time. But to go into the physical building, I only went 3 times. And I used to go regularly before that. And I want to say it was more than 15 years, but I'm saying 15 years just because my memory, I'm thinking it was somewhere around 15, close to 20 years that I haven't done regular church. Yeah. But, I read the Bible. I go online and, it's not the same thing though. It's definitely not the same thing. Online, there's a lot of a disconnection. I'm not a tech person to begin with, so anything online to me is disconnect. As, greeting the person beside you, welcome to church. That's a part of church, I think, because the idea of community, you want to be amongst the community and you want to, and I also feel that the energy from the people in the church also helps your energy as well, and it's like, it's a supportive type of energy where you're online, and online, it's just such a huge disconnect. I don't feel that feeling. The worship, it doesn't worship for me. Worship is not worshiping. So it's just not connecting. But doing church online with a church that I know and that I attend, that's a different, it feels different from just a random church. Sometimes I'm a little disappointed with online when sometimes it cuts before I see everything at the end. But when you're at church, you don't miss anything. Everything is there. If you don't understand something, somebody beside you will whisper and tell you what's going on, right? And you can experience church together. Whereas when you're doing online, if you're not doing it with somebody else, you're just doing it by yourself, and you're experiencing church by yourself. And church is not supposed to be a by yourself thing. It's supposed to be a community thing.
For
So
sure.
that's why I such a huge disconnect with online, because it doesn't feel like community.
For sure. There's definitely more of a connection when you are in church
Yes.
as opposed to doing it online. And so I quickly want to go back to forgiveness and the church hurts, because when someone hurts you, for you to now you've gotten to a point where you're back in church, after taking a long break,
Yes.
and for you to be able to go back, I'm sure you've had to go through some healing.
I
And
am going through.
okay.
I am going through.
Okay.
Your book that I'm reading has been very helpful. Been very helpful because it validates a lot of the church hurt and the performance in church and things like that. And for a long time, I felt that I was alone in it. So this podcast too, I think, would be helpful to be for people like me. I think I'm going to listen back to it so that I can get some more healing as well, because it's a journey. It's not a I have overcome and now I can do it. No, I'm doing it as I'm overcoming. And there was an experience at church with my daughter, and it brought back some church hurt. But the type of daughter that I have, she's just like, Mom, it doesn't matter. And to me, I'm like, yes, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how your dress looked. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter. That is the human nature of people. So I can't bring that into my experience with God anymore. The human nature of people has to stay separate from my experience with God, because then the church hurt situation will just be repetitive and it will keep repeating and keep repeating. And the way I like to approach life is that, you experience things and you ask, what is this trying to teach me? And you learn that lesson and you move on from there and you grow. So going back to church hurt, if something was to happen similar to what I went through in church again, in this church that I'm attending now, it wouldn't affect me as much. Before it would have, but it wouldn't affect me as much because, one, I'm experiencing church and God in my terms. I'm not experiencing it because I have to do it. I'm choosing to do it, right? So those hurts, again, humans make their mistakes. They go through their stuff, but their mistake doesn't reflect on me. It reflects on them. They have to go to God about that. It's not for me to go. And before, I would have been like, oh, well, but given that it was my own family member, that was right there and it hit very close. But as I think about it, like just in life in general, but within the church as well, it doesn't make sense to hold on to those hurts. People are going to say what they're going to say. People are going to do what they're going to do. But you still have to do what you're supposed to do when it comes to God, and what you're supposed to do when it comes to religion and your faith, So I choose not to let other people's, discretions upset my faith. That's what I'm choosing to do these days.
That's very, very important. And I'm happy you touched on that, because I was going to ask you about that, now that you're in a new church, what if church hurt happens again,
That's okay. Bring it on. I'm ready.
That's growth.
I'm ready.
That's growth. Wow.
Yes.
And I'm reminded about there's this Bible verse, Colossians 3 verse 13, that says, make allowance for each other's faults and forgive everyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. It's hard.
It is.
It's very hard.
It is.
It's hard. When you see that sister that said what she wasn't supposed to say,
it doesn't matter.
I roll my eyes, But, the Bible does tell us to make allowances for each other's faults. That means people are going to offend you. People are going to say nasty things about you. People are going to hurt you. And there's this pastor that I listen to that says something, anytime he talks about church hurt, he says, at your place of work, people offend you, people hurt you. your partner as well, your spouse, they'll offend you, your siblings, they'll offend you, your friends, you know, in life, people will offend you. But like when, let's say, for example, at your place of work, if someone hurts you, you find a new job, right? Or if I'm not saying to find a new partner if your partner offends you, but you know, you try to work it out.
Yeah.
But you know, when it comes to church hurt, when people get hurt in church, the first instinct or reaction is I'm done, you know, and they don't think about finding another church, you know, or trying
Because people are
to.
always looking for a reason to run away. People are always looking for a reason to distrust Christianity or religion in the whole.
That's true.
There is reason why people want to distrust. The heads have not been the best influence to the people. So I think that people are always looking for a reason to jump ship. And then when they jump ship, because I was one of those people, always looking for a reason to jump ship. When you jump ship, you're like, okay, well, I'm out here swimming alone. You know, if you end up swimming, some people they struggle.
That's it.
But when you were reading the scripture, I was thinking about something, and I think that scripture now in adulthood hits differently from when we're children.
For sure.
So I think that people who do well with church and overcome church hurt now, not just me, but just people in general, I think it's because, you know, they're coming from a more mature perspective and a perspective of understanding what the word really, really means versus it's just something that you're reciting. Because I have read the Bible back and front so many times, and to this day, I can't just draw a script, because for me, I was jumping ship all the time. I was giving reason to not remember, you know, one verse from the next verse. And I tried very hard not to make that my core. And then there are other people who they make it their core, and they're always reciting scriptures and they don't believe anything that they're saying. So it's just for you to kind of understand, okay, things happen, and you just have to learn how to overcome. What is this trying to teach me? You know, and I think that everything that God sends our way, it prepares us. It prepares us for where we're going. And we just have to accept that, you know. And some people, when their church hurt tends to continuously affect them, it's because they don't understand that God is sending you this trigger so that you can understand this is a trigger for me. If it's triggering me, what do I need to work on within myself? What do I need to grow and overcome, you know? So I think church hurt, it's necessary for our faith sometimes. That's what I think anyway.
That's profound.
It's necessary. Because otherwise, you know, you're just living in the motion, you know. So things people come in our path, and within the church as well. People are going to come. Spirits that are not of God are going to go to church, and they're going to say something about your dress. So you just got to understand that. And for a long time, I was scared of the idea of impure spirits and things like that. And that's another level of religion that a lot of people don't even put together, right? So loving God, walking with God, and knowing that God has you, there shouldn't be any fears. There shouldn't be any worries, because God's got you. God's got you, and you have to believe that. And anything that happens in the church to bring hurt to you, just know that when that happened, it's to pick on something that God is saying, hey, you need to work on this. You need to see this. You need to hear my word. You're not hearing my word. You're reciting scripture as much as you want, but you're not hearing me. So then somebody will come and they will do something, or something will happen, and then you're like, oh my gosh. Well, those are the things that you needed to work with in yourself. So the hurt, I don't think I would ever deal with church hurt like that per se, just because I'm going through all of the feelings that I was feeling before, that I didn't understand, that I'm now beginning to understand, and it's helping me with my relationship with God, with myself, with my family, with the people around me. Just understanding that part of it, I think that can help with the church hurt part, because church hurt isn't, it's, to me, I don't think it should be any different from if somebody random comes and hurts you, your sibling picking on you. You know, I don't think it should be any different. You should always go back to that place of, what is this trying to teach me?
So what I heard from you was you're still healing.
Yes.
And so does that mean it's okay to, go back to church, find a new church, even if the healing isn't complete, even if, you're still struggling with forgiveness?
Yes.
It's still okay to, I guess,
the Bible says, come as you are. My daughter said that to me too the other day. When she sees this. It doesn't matter what state you're in. You go to church, and that's what church is for. That's what she said. She said, Mom, isn't that what church is for? For people just to come. It doesn't matter what they're dealing with. It doesn't matter, what their struggles. People want to call them a sinner. People want to call them, a perfect Christian. It doesn't matter. That's what church is for. You're supposed to go and you're supposed to connect with God, and you're supposed to do that with your people, So definitely go to church.
I like that.
Go to church. Find a good church and go to church.
Yes. And do you think it's wise to involve the leaders of the church or the pastors when, let's say, you've been hurt by another church member? I know it's very dicey when it's the pastor of the church who hurts you, right? It's just, I guess the first reaction is to leave, because who do you report the pastor to, right?
Yeah.
So,
and even when reality is right in front of you, they're not going to believe you, because that's what our Christian religion practices. So, optics. How to deal with that after, I don't know. I don't know. Minor things, talk to your church sister about it. Talk to somebody, there's going to be, if it's a good church and if it's your church, there's going to be somebody that you can talk to about it. For the deeper stuff, especially when it's a pastor, that one's a little bit harder. So I'm like, I think you have to pray about that one, because the way to address it will come to you when you pray.
Holy Spirit will give you wisdom.
Yeah. But definitely, things like, somebody talked about your makeup or your hair, or, talk to your church sister, brother about things like that, because like I said, if it is your community, they'll understand, Yeah. But
yeah, it's hard. I've definitely heard stories, and I've been in such situation as well, where like a pastor did something maybe sexual, and you report, nobody believes you, right? Because it's the pastor over you. So it's hard. Like, so who do you turn to? Where do you go to?
And that's why I say pray about it. Because I think being outside of the church for so long, what brought me back was prayer. And there were many, many, many times I just wanted to turn my back and never go back to church, never open a Bible, never talk about God. And it wasn't something that I could do long term. I mean, in the short term, because I'm so upset, because I'm so hurt, it's easy to do. But long term, it's not, because, a child of God is a child of God, whether you want to or not. You're a child of God.
Wow.
Whether you want it or not. That's how it is. And when you understand that, then you can get through what you need to get through. Again, one church experience doesn't negate all church experience.
So good.
So
good. Because I was going to say that there's so many great churches out there, so many, and I know that recently the church has had a negative, which word do I use? Like the PR the church has been getting lately hasn't been the best.
All the time, though. It's never. That's why I say everybody's ready to jump ship
Yeah.
because the optics is not good. It's not good.
But that doesn't mean that, there aren't good churches out there. I mean, we attend a good church. There's so many good churches out there. And there was something you said at the beginning that really touched me. You know, there are, because of, don't judge God or who God is based off of someone else's experience or someone else's life. You know, we're supposed to represent God
Yeah.
as Christians, but they're bad eggs. There are people who don't,
And we have to separate that from God.
from who
Because,
God is.
yes, we are children of God, but every child, they have to learn. They have to learn right from wrong. They make mistakes. And they do things that the parents, they're so ashamed of. Oh my gosh, why would you do that? Oh, blah, blah, blah. But that's for them to learn what they need to learn. And I can't say that because of what, my dad or the other pastor or my aunt or any of them did, it's gonna shape, well, it's gonna make a final decision about where I'm going. And if I had done that, I wouldn't be in a very good place. I'd be in a very dark place. And I want to believe that I'm somebody with light, not with darkness. And I don't want to be around darkness. I want to be with light. So I definitely don't want one person's decision or one person's words or things like that to then say, okay, well, this is how you're going to be for the rest of your life. So definitely, I think, if you're struggling with church hurt, you definitely have to kind of go within yourself and talk to God and understand what that struggle is about so that you can get through, because they're just people. They're just people, and people make mistakes all the time.
Should you confront those people sometimes?
Sometimes, no, it's not necessary, because, the judgment and things, it comes, like, God will sort that out. They say, leave it to God. That's what I've been doing. Leave it to God. There are a lot of things that I could go and confront people with, and, but when you take it to God, you get your answers, and then you leave it with Him for Him to figure it out. So that's how I do it.
And I guess finally, do you have any advice for churches, like church leaders and I guess the church community, if maybe a pastor is watching this or a church leader, on how to deal with, I guess, members who are
My
going through
thoughts,
hurt?
I know that, there's this idea of what the church community is supposed to be like. And those ideas are the reasons why there's so much church hurt. So I feel that if we can see what's happening and don't turn a blind eye to what's happening, a lot of the people in the church, they know the truth. But again, because of this idea of how our church is supposed, and I keep quoting idea because it's not real. To me, it's not real. I don't think that there's one way of being a Christian and being a good Christian. And the idea of being a good Christian drives me crazy, because there's no such thing as a good Christian, in my opinion. So you see something happening. If this was your own household, you see something going wrong in your house. The weakest link, the strength of your family is as strong as your weakest member. So how strong is your church going to be if somebody with power in your church, or even without power, is doing these things and you're just turning a blind eye? Attack the issue right on the head, because you know what's happening. Don't pretend that it's not happening. And to get to the point where you're pretending and stuff, then I don't think that you're doing the work of God. I then think that it becomes, just a financial gain or a personal gain situation. And in those situations, you need to think about, okay, Just like I was saying, what is God trying to teach me? What are these triggers for me? What are, for you to see things like this and overlook it? It happened in your church. That means that you need to address this. It happened in your church. You need to, why did it happen in my church? So a lot of people aren't doing that. And it drives me crazy because it's a domino effect when things are not addressed. And it's a domino effect in the sense, like with me, I went through my upset and my hurt with my church hurt. And because of that, it now sets an example to my children of what church is like. And they have found church for themselves, but there's a lot of confusion in that, which it didn't have to. And I'm trying to break that with my granddaughter because I don't want my church hurt to affect so many generations. And it can. So I think, people will talk. Who cares? Let them talk. Let them talk. You addressing the issue it'll save so many lives. Like, it sounds cliche for me to say that, but it will save so many lives. All of the people that have come into my life, my church hurt has affected them in some way. And I've put it over on the people in my life until I understood I couldn't do that anymore. So I feel that, just attack the issue, because usually it's just one or two persons versus generations of church hurt, So address it. Don't turn a blind eye to it. And it makes you a good leader too, to be able to do that. You might think, oh, well, what would people say? People will say you're a good leader. So lead. God put you in that position for a reason. So, do what you're supposed to do instead of looking away and pretending it's not happening. Yeah.
And do you think you ever get to the point where you say, I have healed and I have finally forgiven? Do you think that's attainable for you?
I think so. I do. I do think so. I mean, there are times where I feel that I have forgiven already, and then something comes up and it triggers. And again, that's why I keep saying, work on those triggers. Find out, why am I being triggered by this consistently? And then you can get through those hurts, So yeah, the healing is there. I don't think that anybody is completely healed of anything ever. So there'll always be a little bit of nagging of, oh gosh, you remember it in the back of your head, but it won't affect you, because I go to church. I go to church. I mean, I never thought I would have gone back to church.
Wow.
So I go to church.
Look at God.
Right? So would you say, am I fully healed? The forgiveness is there, and that's why I have gone back to church.
That's good.
So, yeah.
Wow. Wow. Amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Trish, for joining us today and for addressing this very, very sensitive topic. It's sensitive, but it is very important because a lot of people are going through this, and I feel like this conversation will help someone out there who is trying to go back to church.
Yeah.
Do you have any other thing to add?
Thank you for helping me to go back to church. Thank you. I do. I don't know. I don't think you understand that how profound it was for you to come and sit in my chair. It was very profound. And that helped me to kind of get over that last hurdle that I was struggling with for so long. And yeah, I went back to church. Go back to church.
Thank you so much, Trish.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for joining us.